This week's episode is sponsored by Leica.
You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For 50 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Derek Fassbender.
Welcome, listeners. I'm Derek Fassbender, host of the B&H Photography Podcast.
And I'm Jill Waterman, the show's senior creative producer.
And I'm Mike Weinstein, the technical producer and the show's recording engineer.
When it comes to high-octane sports, nothing beats the thundering energy and human drama that unfolds across the surface of an automotive racetrack. Photographers who specialize in this adrenaline-fueled niche are best served by nerves of steel and the high endurance to lug multiple cameras and the long lenses needed to freeze the action. In today's show, you'll hear from two of the finest in the field, photographers Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price. But before we dive in, we'd like to call out to a big fan of the show named Ryan. He picked up on our request for future topics mentioned in a recent show on competitive cycling photography, and he emailed to suggest we cover the theme of motorsports photography, featuring none other than today's guests. Thanks for the suggestion, Ryan. This show's for you, so we hope you're listening. And to all our other listeners, please keep the suggestions coming. We welcome your input either via email or at our home under the podcast tab on B&H Photos YouTube page. We couldn't do this show without you, and we're truly thankful for your engagement. Now, on to the photographers. Camden Thrasher is a motorsports photographer with the distinctive ability to capture unique scenes of fast action. Growing up in Vancouver, Washington, it was the sound of engines from a nearby racetrack that first drew him to motorsports. After becoming a fixture at the track with his camera during high school, Camden studied automotive design and engineering in college, expecting to work as an engineer or on a pit crew. But the money he was making as a side hustle with his camera convinced him to stick with photography, and he hasn't looked back since. Using a unique slow shutter speed method perfected over many exposures, Camden revels in showcasing the abstract qualities of gleaming metal, bright lights, and dynamic action that are all hallmarks of this sport. Now based out of Atlanta, Georgia, Camden's work has been commissioned by top racing teams and featured in a wide range of media, from print magazines to automotive branding campaigns. Jamey Price is an automotive photographer based in Charlotte, North Carolina, whose motorsports work has taken him to more than 25 countries and across most of the continental U.S. Jamey's photography career began while he was competing as a thoroughbred horse racing jockey and exercise rider. During this time, he completed more than 50 races, notching 11 wins in the saddle. His life in horse racing was eventually compiled into the self-published book Chasing, Racing Life in England and Ireland. Yet, in 2011, Jamey's photography career switched from horses to horsepower. Since he began chasing race cars, his images have been published worldwide in magazines, distributed by sports imagery wire services, and featured by top commercial clients. Additionally, Jamey is a Lexar Elite artist since 2014. Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I love it. We've been on a high energy streak lately. We've had all these action type of photographers on the show. It brings the energy. So we're going to hit the ground running here. Jamey, I want to talk a little bit about before you became a motorsports photographer, the horse racing world. You were a horse racing jockey, and you also photographed this sport rather extensively. So I want to talk about the comparison between horse racing and motorsports. Obviously, it's moving. Is there any other comparisons that you can make?
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of comparison, and I don't get to photograph as much horse racing these days as I used to, but I really miss it a lot. It's an amazing sport. It's a beautiful sport. I kind of compare horse racing to what car racing used to be, and it's more similar to motorcycle racing, where you really have the rider kind of exposed on top of the horse. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of color. The atmosphere at the races is a lot of fun. It's not just like take pictures of horses, galloping by. You're kind of covering the event as a whole. Kind of think of the Kentucky Derby as a great benchmark for that. And that's kind of what a lot of them are like. You go to a race and there's beautiful women and handsome guys in seersucker suits and big hats and bow ties and just tons of color. and you're there to capture the event and not just the sport as it goes by you once every half hour. So yeah, there's actually a lot of comparisons. There's a lot of danger element to it as well. So it was a really great place to learn and really adapt my skills of sports photography because it is really challenging. Unlike with what Camden and I do now, where we just finished a 12-hour race and the race before that was a 24-hour race. So we've basically done 36 hours of racing before we've even gotten to like mid-March. With horse racing, they go by you like once, maybe twice, and then you wait another half hour for the next race. And you don't get as many chances at it. Whereas Camden and I are out trackside for 24 hours during a 24-hour race, and you get hundreds of attempts at getting a picture the way you want it to be.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that in terms of there's a lot less room for error on the horse racing side of things. Like you said, you might get one or two chances. Is that where you'll call on your experience as a jockey, where you know already from being in the saddle what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think any photography discipline, the more you know about it, the better you give yourself those opportunities. I wouldn't necessarily say that being a jockey made me a better horse racing photographer, but you might see it a little bit differently. You might see some of the details a little bit differently. Like, it's still true to this day that I love taking pictures of racing in the rain. Like when we get a really big rainstorm coming through and you have cars throwing up spray, it's the exact same in horse racing. You get the horses kicking up mud and you see the rain like literally hitting the horse's head because they're moving through the rain, and you see the jockeys covered in mud. It's really a very visually stimulating sport. They both are. So I don't know that I would say being a jockey helped me, but you see the details a little bit differently, and you appreciate it a little bit differently when you know like a horse came from behind or had a really difficult race, but still ended up winning, or the jockey did something extraordinary. You kind of appreciate it a little bit that way. But I don't know that it really helped as a photographer.
Interesting. Now, what was it that got you into motorsports? Is this something that's always been a love, or was there one defining moment that you made the switch on?
I've always loved car racing. It wasn't something I grew up around at all. My parents weren't into it. My dad wasn't really into it. I mean, even growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is the home of NASCAR, where all the NASCAR teams are based with very few exceptions, I just never really went to the track. I was never really around racing. And I kind of discovered it just by accident, flipping channels on the old satellite TV when I was 11 or 12 years old. And the satellite actually just happened to stop on the Monaco Grand Prix of 1998, I think. And you didn't even have a remote to change the channel. You had to like sit underneath the TV to change the dial. And I remember looking up when I heard this like crazy screaming noises, and like British people kind of screaming at the TV, like the commentary. And I just thought it was fascinating, and I ended up watching it and just becoming totally obsessed with car racing. I became a subscriber to a number of magazines and just really loved the visual aspect of the sport. And it wasn't something that I grew up around, though. I just kind of started really diving into it just as much as I could outside of the horse racing and other sports that I was competing in.
Mm-hmm. Which contrasts you, Camden, because you were going to the local racetrack when you were growing up. I'm guessing the love was there before the photography was there. How did you make the connection between photographing the races and just a love of racing?
The photography, I'd call it a bit of an accident, just that I picked up my dad's film camera and was just interested in that as a mechanical device that was cool. And I started bringing it to the racetrack, not with any mindset on, I'm going to link these two things that I like, just that here's this cool old camera that my dad let me use, and here's this racetrack that I'm going to all the time. So why not use this as a place to start learning how the camera works, how photography works?
So using it as a learning experience, and here we are today on a photography podcast, talking about your awesome work. When did you really start to develop the love, or when did you start to go away from, I want to work on a pit crew, to I want to photograph it?
Probably that departure from the engineering and wanting to be a mechanic or a fabricator would have been in college, where I just didn't pursue any of the engineering, where I was studying outside of school. And all of that time was, can I get to this race this weekend? Can I drive to California and make it back before the math final that I have to take just so I can get to this cool race that was going on.
So your college experience was more of an extracurricular activity than book studies, right?
Yeah. I think after college, when I just thought, hey, this photography stuff is really cool. I'm making a little money on it. And I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do with an engineering job. I think it was, let's keep going to racetracks and see what I can make of this.
I love that. And obviously worked out good. How long was it before it became something where you were making money? I'm kind of interested for both of you because this is a genre that probably a lot of people are interested in, but don't know how it works. What's the trajectory like from the time that you really get in and get your feet wet to where you can make it a career?
It can be challenging. Like I would say in high school, there was one or two like local guys that would pay me for photos that I would take. But that was, equivalent to mowing lawns on a weekend or whatever kind of random job a high schooler might have, not something that you could support yourself on. In college, it was a little better. I was starting to meet people, get my name out there. So that was improving a bit, but I think it took time before I could really support myself fully on that. Having a very cheap college lifestyle was helpful at that point.
Yeah, it was pretty similar in some ways for me. Like a lot of the work that I was doing when I was in college, I went to a very small liberal arts school. And so I wasn't really competing with other photographers on the sidelines. Like there was a school photographer, but it was just kind of like a bunch of us that just were students there and had cameras. And I would like take pictures of the girls' soccer team or my own swimming teammates. And so I would take pictures of some of the athletes in the games. And I would make like $50, $70, $100 at a game, just selling them to the parents of these kids. And this was basically like early days of Facebook. So I could put a gallery on my Facebook page and the parents would send me a message, be like, "Oh, I love this picture of Bobby. Can we get a print of it?" And so I would sell them prints and I kind of made a little bit here and there. And the horse racing was really challenging. Like there's very little money to be made in horse racing. Like it's very, very difficult. I know photographers that do make money at it and they are kind of like the rare exceptions. So when I was riding, I was making more as a jockey than I was actually selling the pictures that I would take like when I wasn't riding. And then eventually I got to the point where I could make a little bit off of the pictures that I was making at these horse racing events, but it wasn't enough that I could really make a living out of it. It wasn't something that I really wanted to pursue. And it wasn't until I started attending races pretty regularly that I started, building up a name for myself that I could actually start making real money at it. And I was a salesman for an alarm company for 3 or 4 years after college. And I was riding racehorses a little bit here and there on the side too. But my main income was selling alarm systems. And it really got to the point where I was making enough money at the photography, but my day job selling alarms was taking away from my ability to make money as a photographer, and my ability to travel and go to these races was taking away from my job as a salesman. So I was kind of like, I need to go in on this or give up the dream entirely. And so I decided, kind of like Camden, where I just lived not on a shoestring, but you cut corners where you can, and you just don't live a lavish lifestyle to make it work. So I started getting enough clients that I felt comfortable enough just living. Thankfully didn't have any kids at the time. I wasn't married. It was just me that I had to worry about in, a small apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina. And you can do it a lot cheaper than you can trying to live in LA or New York or, Austin, Texas or somewhere like that where your rent's going to be insane. Like Charlotte's a pretty low cost of living city, which is great. And it helped me a lot just trying to build my business.
There's so many of us that have this origin story of a 9 to 5 that wasn't the dream job. It paid the bills and it kind of ushered us towards following our dreams, our passions.
100%.
We all have that thing there that's like, you know what, this is soul sucking. Maybe I should take a risk. Maybe I should take a jump. What is it life like for you guys now? Like how many days a year are you on the road? Is it a regular schedule? Can you take us through I'm interested in like the logistics of the whole thing. Like how far out in advance is it planned? What types of jobs are you doing?
Yeah, so I think the race series that Jamey and I both shoot primarily is 10 to 12 races. And then I have another few off-road races that I do with probably 3 or 4 of those. And then there's always a handful of other stuff that gets added in kind of on the fly. So I would say I am traveling, doing something motorsport related at least every other week minimum.
Wow.
And then I do a lot of other stuff on my own just for my like personal projects that end up taking those other off weekends and turning them into me going somewhere and shooting something else. But I would say it's pretty close to every other week for like a January through end of October timeframe.
I'm fairly similar. Camden and I both cover the IMSA WeatherTech series. There's different things. The schedule is pretty locked a year in advance, like more or less. Like we know where we'll be next year for the IMSA WeatherTech series. They've already released the schedule, but then, I cover a handful of Formula One races. I've covered a lot of other events for some of my other commercial clients. During the busy season, like sometimes I'm not home for more than 3 days in a month, and all of it I'm traveling somewhere for something. But then there's other times of year, like right now, I'm kind of in a part of the year where I don't really have anything that I'm chasing. I'm choosing to be home to be a dad. Like there's a lot of events that I've now turned down or series that I no longer work in just because I want to be home with my kids and my wife. And when you're on the road for 25 to 30 weeks a year, it's pretty challenging. Like it's really hard to have a home life. It's hard to have friends. You miss a lot of stuff. Like I've missed birthdays, funerals, weddings, you name it. I almost missed my daughter's birth. I made it back, so it's all good, but it's hard. And it's a side of this that not everybody necessarily sees. They're like, oh, cool cars. You get to be around the coolest and most expensive and most ridiculous race cars on earth and stuff that most people only see in video games. And Camden and I get to like basically see them, touch them, sit in them, talk to the drivers and all that. And it's amazing. But then there's this whole other side. You give up a lot of home life. You give up a lot of personal life. You're just living out of a suitcase in a hotel. And these aren't nice hotels. I don't get an expense budget most of the time from a lot of my clients. Like if I choose to stay at a Motel 6 that's an hour away from the track, I'm making more money because I'm not spending that money on a hotel that's like 5 minutes away from the track.
Yes, this is the real side of a job like this where it's not glamorous and it takes a toll on you. And
it totally does.
I mean, you guys are carrying around a ton of gear. It's high pressure. The faster the sport, the faster the action. I feel like there's more pressure on you guys in what you have to capture. Can you take us a little bit through race day from, how early are you guys getting there? Are you guys there a day in advance, 2 days in advance? Are you showing up at the track and sometimes you might not even know what to expect or what your vantage point's going to be?
Usually I'm arriving probably the day before stuff is really going to start to get myself set up, get myself ready. If it's a venue that I've not been to, I will take time to walk around the track, or more appropriately, walk around the places where we're allowed to photograph and find ways in and out. So I'm not like wasting time during a race trying to figure out how do I get from A to B. So that's important to do. Sometimes you got to show up and just kind of wing it. But as much as I can, I try not to have that be the case because it's not efficient time-wise, and that can end up showing in the work output if it's clear that you really don't know what you're doing. And that's never great personally, nor to the people that I work for.
Yeah, they're like, Camden, why'd you come back with 5 pictures from that session? You're like, well, I got in a fight with a security guard and I got lost. And
Does that kind of stuff happen a lot?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
as much as we try to make it not happen, yes, it does. There was a race in Detroit last year that's in the middle of the city that I had not been to. I think Jamey may have went the year before.
No, I'd never been. Last year was my first time.
Okay. Well, in the end, I thought it was an awesome place, but being in the middle of a city and not like a real racetrack, there's a lot of things where you might think, oh, this parking garage is going to be cool to shoot from. And you spend 20 minutes walking there and there's a fence like between you and the door to get to the parking garage. And then you realize, oh, well, I actually would have had to go on the opposite side and come around. And that's like another 30 minutes to accomplish that.
And by this time, the session had started, and you're like,
Yeah,
great.
I've just wasted most of my time thinking I could get here where I actually can't.
There's just a ton of variables to it.
Yeah, in that case, I did do like a pretty good chunk of the day before walking around and trying to figure that out. But in the end, there's always stuff that pops up, or someone says, hey, you can't come through here. And I have a piece of paper that says I'm allowed to be on the other side, but for some reason they're saying I can't come through this specific gate. So you got to figure out, do I argue with this person? Do I ignore them and potentially have some consequences from that? Or do I just say, okay, and figure out a different way to get to where I want to go and where I'm supposedly allowed to go?
Yeah, it's so much more than like standing trackside and taking a picture of a race car going past. Like, that's the easy part. The hard part is like doing what he just said, where you're dealing with people that don't necessarily have the same safety briefing that we do. And most of the series that we cover will give a safety briefing or where we can and can't go. Like the Detroit race that he was just talking about, that setup day, we call it the media day. I think I walked 11 miles that one day, just walking the inside and the outside of the track, just trying to find like different locations, because it was a new circuit the previous year, but none of us had been to it. It was only an IndyCar race, and the main IMSA WeatherTech series that we covered didn't go that year. So last year when we all show up, it was a brand new event for all of us, basically. And so we're trying to learn on the fly. And like he said, a street circuit is just totally different than a permanent circuit, where a permanent circuit generally has an access road where it goes around the inside and the outside, and there's gates to get in and out. It's an established facility. Whereas a street circuit, you are literally throwing up fences on public roads, a couple days before, and then they close off the roads. Like, I remember walking around, and it's like there's still cars driving around on it. And then that night they'll actually like put all the finished barricades up to close off the road so that somebody can't make a left-hand turn and then end up on the racetrack with the race cars. So you end up doing a ton of pre-research for it, but you get out there like 20 minutes before the session, and there's a security guard that's like, yeah, I have no idea that photographers were going to be out here, and we've been told nobody's allowed here. And you're like, well, great, because I know that I'm allowed here, but because you're a guy with a whistle, you're now going to like call the cops and make this a thing. And that happens a lot. And it doesn't really happen so much with the permanent circuits, but when we go to places like Detroit, sometimes Long Beach, some of the older ones, they've been doing it long enough that it's not so much of a deal anymore or an issue anymore. It's the newer ones that you go to where you run into big problems with just access. It's so frustrating because you're like, I know that I have to come back from this session. Like, I have real clients that are expecting real pictures. And if I come back with, not a full gallery of pictures for them to use, they're going to be like, what's the deal? Like, you don't have very many pictures from this session. And you're kind of like, yeah.
Some hard ass with a whistle stopped me.
Yeah. And they don't care. They don't necessarily understand. You can complain about it all day long and you try not to, but they don't care. You just got to do your job.
What are the requirements? Does it vary per race? Do they give you like a shot list, or, what time are you shooting for them? Is there any time where you're like, hey, I've fulfilled what I need to do. I'm kind of in bonus time here. Let me try to be creative and get some stuff from my own portfolio. Or how does that work out?
I don't really ever feel like I'm in bonus time. I always feel like I've got something that they've asked for still left to do. Ultimately, being a motorsport photographer really isn't necessarily all about race car pictures. For the first weekend of the year that we do, which is called the Roar Before 24. So we do a big testing weekend in Daytona before the Rolex 24 Hour, which is the following weekend. And that Roar testing weekend, we are doing studio stuff with lights and strobes. We're doing product photography. Like, I'm doing merchandise photography for one of my teams with the drivers wearing t-shirts and hats, but then also merchandise that's just laid out on a white backdrop. Like, I had to shoot oil cans sitting on one of the race cars. You're hitting like different sponsor needs on the race cars. And then you still have to do like the candid people photography drivers interacting with engineers just kind of doing their jobs. One of my teams needs the pictures of every single mechanic doing their job. So it's kind of like a never ending checklist. And then on top of all of that, you still have to go out and take pictures of the race cars on track, wheels turning and all that. So yeah, it's a lot. It's not just like doing 20th of a second pans, making pretty pictures. There's a lot to it. You're kind of hitting a lot of different photography niches. And some teams and some clients are really easygoing. Like the shot list basically doesn't exist. When they hire Camden or myself, they know what they're going to get. Like when they hire Camden, they hire Jamey. We've been around more than 10 years at this point. Like if you get hired, like they kind of know what to expect from us, and that we also know our job and the role that we play and what's expected. And then there's other clients where they have a really set, very detailed shot list that's multiple pages long. And then you compare that to the teams that are like, yeah, just go have fun, come back with some cool stuff.
So a lot of these races, they are for these clients within the racing communities. It's not like you're pulling up and you're working on a freelance basis.
It doesn't happen very often. Like I know Camden has an editorial client. I don't have any anymore. It just doesn't pay enough to justify the traveling around. It's all mainly commercial clients, teams, drivers, manufacturers, sponsors. And if somebody wants to pay for like an editorial coverage of a race, I'm already there. I might get thrown a little bit here and there, but it definitely isn't paying my bills.
I would say that technically, because I'm not employed by any of the clients I work for, in that sense, it's freelance. But I'm not showing up and just shooting pictures and then saying, hey, I have these for sale if anyone wants to buy them. So in that sense, if that's what you were getting at, I don't think that happens anymore. And at least from what I'm aware of, the race series, they always say in doing a credential application, we don't accept freelance photographers. You need to be there on some sort of assignment from someone, whether it's a magazine, a team, a sponsor, a driver, or whatever. You need some justification of being there for the people organizing the event to let you in these places that the public are not generally allowed to go.
Okay, so it's like a more exclusive group. And how many photographers are in there working with you? Is it something where you guys are vying for the same shots, or do you have to try to set yourself apart from other people? How do you set yourself apart from other photographers?
I'd say that in the IMSA series that we both do, there's probably, 20 people that are doing every race of the season and have been for a number of years. Jamey, does that sound roughly correct?
Yeah, I think like between 20 to 30, and that includes video as well. Like, it's not just still photographers. There's a couple of video people, and those people are working for teams that are doing a full season, manufacturers that are involved heavily in the series that are running multiple car programs. And you don't really have people that are coming just to cover the editorial side. Like all of those 20 will have a team or manufacturer client.
In addition to that, there could be a number of times more that amount that are, let's say, local media. Maybe they're only doing a couple races per year. Maybe Rolex watches only sends a photographer to the first race of the year. So there's quite a number of overall media.
From Daytona, there's probably 80 to 100 photographers that are working that event, specifically like just the Rolex 24. But then, there will only be 20 of us that do the entire 12 race season.
So it sounds like it's kind of like a tight-knit group. Like you guys are familiar with each other. You guys kind of know what to expect when you're showing up.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I don't want to say we're all friends because it's kind of like being in school where you like some people more than others. Like you just get along with some people more than others. You gravitate to some people more than others. Like Camden and I have been very good friends for a very long time. Like we kind of started almost at the same time.
Yeah.
For our careers, like back in 2011, we basically showed up almost at the same race for our first race.
I had done one a couple years before that, but that was the start of really doing it regularly.
Yeah, we've known each other for a very, very long time, and it's kind of the same throughout the rest of the media center. There's photographers that might show up and maybe do a couple a year, and you kind of get to know some people, but if they're not like showing up week in and week out, you don't really get to know them the same way that I've known Camden and Sam Cobb and Bob Chapman and Al Arena and Rick Dole and all these other photographers that we work in like 12 times a year, you get to know each other really well. So we go out to dinners and we try and make it fun too, because when you're away from home as much as we are, you try and laugh a little bit. Like we really kind of bully each other, but like in a fun way.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's competition because there's a limited amount of
Clients.
money, ways to get income in this. And if it gets distributed over more people, that's less money for any one person. So there's competition in that sense. There's friendly competition between all of us. This other guy took a really amazing photo, and maybe I had thought about doing that and didn't, or I tried and it didn't work.
But I don't ever really feel like we get to a corner and you just have somebody in the way. Like when we're all out trackside together for a race start or sunset, those are kind of the big ones. Sometimes they do a fireworks display during the Rolex 24 where you just get like all the photographers lined up in one area. There's only so many ways to shoot it, and there's only so many places to do it from. Like, a start shot is really only going to be really good from turn one at any certain track. Like that's where the cars all come together at you. And so you're standing there with like all 20, 30, 50, 70 other people, and it can be really busy, but you never really feel like these people are in my way unnecessarily. Like you just kind of make it work. We all work together, especially those of us that are working regularly with each other. I'm never going to be like, Camden, get the heck out of the way. You were genuinely in my way. We don't ever really have that. You just kind of like make it work.
Yeah, inevitably that happens sometimes. But yeah, I think there's genuinely respect between all of us where if I'm at the same corner at the start with 30 other people and I realize that the importance of this shot might be more to someone else, I'll kind of stand back and say, why don't you take the clearer shot on this? And I'll stand back and get what I can. And if I don't get anything because there's a couple people in front of me and it's kind of weird looking, like, okay, I didn't really need this too much in the first place. So I think we generally work pretty well together with each other just because we know we're all trying to do a job, and it's mutually beneficial if we don't argue with each other all the time.
That's awesome. It sounds like there's a lot of camaraderie there rather than like, oh, wow, look at that shot Camden took. Wait for Camden to walk 20 feet and you're over there taking the same shot. Well, great idea. What's the etiquette with that out there on the circuit?
It's frowned upon. Like you don't want to copy somebody. That's never a good way to just go about anything. I've known Camden a long time, and he's super artistic in everything that he does. And I remember there was one race that we did, and I look over, we're kind of at the same corner. It wasn't an amazing time of day. It was kind of like mid-late morning. The light wasn't amazing. I look over and Camden's like kneeled down doing something. I'm like, what is this dude doing? Like, what come like
you already knew.
But I've known Camden for so long. I'm like, what is Camden Thrasher seeing? And he'll get back to the media center or he'll post it on Instagram later, and it'll be like a race car with a unicorn and a rainbow and a bright piece of sunlight that's coming through, and it's all real. Like he didn't Photoshop it. It's just like Camden saw something that nobody else saw, and he's doing this weird, funky thing. And I'm like, Camden, like what the heck? And I have huge respect for him because he sees races totally differently. Like sometimes I'll go to a race and I'll be like, I don't feel like I was at the same race as Camden was. Like my stuff is really boring, or it's just really just kind of average. I was just checking boxes, and Camden comes back and like with this banger portfolio of new stuff. And you're like, I didn't see that. And it's annoying, but I don't want to go and like copy what he's doing. And there are people that do just go copy that kind of shot. You're never going to be Camden. You're never going to be me. We're never going to be each other because we're all different. We all see it differently. I really try and actively avoid just going and copying what other people are doing. If you're going to go to the same spot and do the same thing, you want to put your own spin on it. And it works a lot better to do that because ultimately, like my clients aren't necessarily hiring me just because they like my pictures. They like me for me. I've been around long enough, like I can just go do my own thing and not try and copy what other people are doing.
I would say I've seen, stuff where I thought, that looks like kind of a direct copy of what I just did. And in the end, whatever. I don't claim to be the inventor of a lot of things. So I may have been imitating someone else. But I think if I do, I try to see what someone else has done and look at what I like about it, what I don't, what might I change to make it my own. And I think that is important. there's some benefit in trying to analyze how someone may have created an image and then trying to go do that. But I wouldn't encourage people just to like straight up copy it, because then it's not really their own
Right.
work.
Yeah, you want to put your own mark on it.
You're doing someone else's work. So if you want to try and copy and learn like technically how was this done, I mean, that's great. That's awesome. But then decide like something you like about it, or figure out like, oh, I like this part of the image, but this other part I don't. I'm going to go and do this differently because I want it to be lighter, darker, whatever it may be. Just make it somehow your own and your own vision instead of reproducing someone else's.
Yeah, I mean, you guys both have phenomenal work, and it's completely different. It's like you said, Jamey, Camden's style is different than yours. You guys both have great eyes. You both execute in such an artistic way, but you would never confuse, even looking extensively through your portfolios, the work is across the board. It's not like, okay, some shots are kind of similar. It's really two different sets of eyes, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. And it's fun. I like going to races where you see what other people do and you can like take inspiration in some way somehow just from what others are doing. And I don't necessarily want to do what Camden's doing at a race. Like he has a different brief from his clients than I do. And I'm okay with that. Like I've been around long enough to know like this is my skill set. This is what I'm good at and not good at. And I'll see some of the artistic stuff that Camden does. I'm like, that is insane. And I literally couldn't do it because I can't see it.
I mean, I think it's cool when you see, like some people have sent me, and I know like Jamey said this other times, there's a photo of like 12 photographers standing shoulder to shoulder at a racetrack. And someone's like, why are they all taking the same photo? And I think it's cool to see that they might actually not be. Like you could have that many people literally in the almost the same exact location, but all doing completely different things. You can actually come up with quite widely varying images, even standing
Shoulder to shoulder
with someone,
yeah,
based on your own vision, based on what you might have been asked to do, based on camera lens choice, all that. It can be very different, even if you're from the outside look like you're just shooting the same thing.
So earlier in the show, you guys mentioned endurance racing, and I'm really curious about those sort of long races. How do they differ from other types of races, and how often do you run up against endurance races? How often are they programmed?
I love endurance racing, and I know Camden would say the same. Like, it's so much fun. It's the best kind of racing. Our next race is the shortest race of the year. It's the Long Beach Grand Prix, where they literally race around the streets of Long Beach, and it's a 90-minute race. And 90 minutes flies by. Like, we're walking from corner to corner. And Long Beach isn't even a long one. It's maybe like 2.5 miles long as a track, but getting like from corner to corner, you have to go over bridges and through parking garages and through the Bubba Gump Shrimp Restaurant. You are literally walking miles and miles and miles. And in 90 minutes, like you really can't cover that much. But then when you compare that to a 24, and we do a couple of them every year. So we have the Rolex 24, which is a big one in January. And then there's the 24 Hours of Le Mans in June in France. And then we've both done the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, which is in Germany, usually in June. And then there's the 24 Hours of Spa, which is usually June or July. And they literally run for 24 hours. And most of the European ones run from 4 p.m. on Saturday to 4 p.m. on Sunday. And even though it sounds like an insanely long time to be doing photography, they also absolutely fly by because the light is constantly changing. So you never really feel like you're just standing around doing one thing. Like you are running from corner to corner. You are trying to hit pit lane. You're trying to do like all these different things. With nighttime stuff, you go back to the pit lane in the morning or the daytime versus the middle of the night. It's completely different. They are really, really exhausting. Everybody's like, oh, 24 hours isn't that hard. I've stayed up for 24 hours before. It's like, no. We don't just wake up at 4 p.m. and just like walk out the front door and, grab our camera gear and then it's green flag. Like you're up at 6 or 7 in the morning. You go to the track and there's all kinds of stuff happening in the morning. I had meet and greets that I had to shoot before the Rolex 24. Like it's nonstop. And then there's a 2-hour grid where there's fans around the cars and there's VIPs and manufacturer VIPs and celebrities, like LeBron James is wandering around the grid at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and you're still trying to get pictures of the mechanics working on the car and the car surrounded by people. And then you start a 24-hour race. And then once the race is over, that doesn't mean like, okay, you just go to bed at 4 p.m. when it's over. You have to edit all these pictures because it doesn't work like the wedding industry where you're going to deliver pictures 4 to 6 weeks later. Like my brother-in-law just got married in September, and I think he got his pictures back in, I don't know, January or something. And it's like our clients have everything from that entire race day basically within an hour of the race being over.
Wow.
So it's a lot. I don't know about Camden. I didn't sleep during the Rolex 24 this year. I was awake for 38 hours, I think, from Saturday morning to Sunday night. And by the end of it, you feel like you're drunk, to be honest, because I don't drink coffee during endurance races. I feel very strongly that when you start the caffeine drip, you can't stop it. And it makes it a lot harder than it needs to be because you just have to keep that caffeine kick going. And it gets harder and harder to keep that energy level going because then you just get the peaks and valleys of energy. So I just drink lots of water and just try and keep on top of a semi-regular food schedule. By the end of it, your brain doesn't work. It's pretty challenging to be creative. Trying to hold a conversation with somebody, like I've fallen asleep against the catch fence. I've fallen asleep on my laptop. It's really, really, really hard, but it's amazing.
What about holding your camera and all that heavy gear when you're that tired?
Your feet and your shoulders are hurting by then. I don't think I slept at the 24 either. I generally try to take some time either in the middle of the night or maybe after sunrise to take a nap or something, because even 45 minutes helps a ton.
Yeah.
And it'll show in your work how strong you are mentally after 18 hours. It's hard to keep going in the final hours of the race.
Yeah.
If you've been up for 32 hours at that point. It's hard to keep the creativity going. It's hard to get motivated to do something you may have wanted to do earlier, but now you're like,
I'm not walking out to that corner to do this shot.
yeah.
I mean, physically, like I get these dehydration headaches generally the next day, where even if you've been drinking water all day and you've had electrolytes, you still wake up the next day and you feel like you got hit by a bus. Like your back hurts, your feet hurt. I get these back spasms. It is a seriously physical job, but when you have a team or a manufacturer, there is no go sleep for 5 hours and come back. They need pictures, and I'm getting texts all day long. We need pictures from the grid, and the grid just happened. We need pictures of the CEOs standing around the car, and like the race just started. It's relentless. And when sunset happens, they need those sunset pictures 20 minutes or immediately after sunset to make a social media post or a story or something. And that's where we really work pretty closely with a lot of the PR people on the teams, that they know us and we know them, and they know what to expect and when to ask for it and when to push. But like during an endurance race, there is no break. It's nonstop for the entire race day, all the way through Sunday.
Jamey, you just wore me out. That entire description, I'm sitting here, I'm like, suddenly my back's hurting. I'm tired. I think I'm out of breath. My anxiety's peaking. I think this is a great time to go to a short break. So let's stand up, stretch, shake it out. Or if you're already standing, have a seat and relax. And when we come back, we're going to shift the conversation to gear as well as other aspects of motorsport photography with Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price.
The Leica SL3 is a source of inspiration and a trusted companion, elevating the art of visual storytelling to a new level. Ideal for those who aim to enhance their photography and videography skills, the SL3 provides a fully immersive creative experience. The Leica SL3's 60-megapixel BSI sensor offers a 15-stop dynamic range, noise control, and creatives can choose between 3 different RAW and JPEG output resolutions without any loss of quality. The Maestro 4 image processor with 8 gig buffer ensures fast and reliable photo and video operation. Optimized noise characteristics, rapid signal processing, and unique Leica color reproduction are perfect for high-resolution photography and 8K video recording. It also impresses with its IP54 water and dust protection and full metal housing, allowing the camera to be used for both photo and video shoots in challenging environments. The SL3 is compatible with almost any Leica lens ever built. including modern M and SL lenses, L-mount Alliance lenses, older vintage optical designs, spotting scopes, and cinema lenses, offering creatives the ability to choose the best optics for their next creation. Head on over to bnh.com for more information about the Leica SL3.
And we are back with Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price. Now, before we went to break, the adrenaline was high. I'm going to bring it back down, take it a little calmer for now. Let's go to gear. I want to know what you guys are carrying around the day of a shoot. What is the go-to kit? How much gear are you guys lugging?
For me, what I'm carrying around 90% of the time is 2 Nikon Z9s, and I'll have a 35-1.4 from Sigma, and then a 70-200, and then a 500mm prime telephoto.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I have 2 Z9s. I kind of have a variety of stuff that I'll carry in my camera bag. I might not use it that weekend. And I kind of know at this point what lenses will be useful at what races. Like some places we go, a super wide fisheye is just not a useful lens. But I have a 14-24, and I'll use a 24mm in the paddock and pit lane area. I also love my 35, and then I really stick primarily to 70-200. And then I have a 400-2.8 that I use for trackside stuff, and it has the built-in teleconverter that you can flip it, and it just goes to a 560 f4. But most motorsport photographers, we use big glass. Like you have to. Like these racetracks are big, and race cars, generally speaking, are small. Like you're shooting over pretty serious distances just for the safety of it. Like the Monaco Formula One Grand Prix is one where you can really kind of shoot it on a 70-200 and it would be okay. But most tracks, you need long glass, like 400, 500, 600. You know, you're shooting over pretty big expanses of tarmac and gravel runoff that are just there to protect the drivers, protect the circuit marshals and safety officials, and then, of course, the fans.
I'm interested in the gear choice. How did you guys settle on Nikon, or what are the features? Because we talk about features online incessantly. Every comment section is full of people just arguing. But I think for motorsports photography, like this is it. The gear has to work. You're not out here zone focusing, legacy manual glass. What are the features that you guys rely upon? What brought you to the Nikon system? I'm interested personally in that.
Okay, so I kind of want to like preface that. So Camden is actually a great example of this. When did you go full mirrorless?
Slight correction, I haven't done that exactly, but yeah, I bought the Z9 when it came out. I still have my D5s, and I still bring them, and I still find uses for when I would much prefer those.
Yeah, so like Camden's a great example, and there's another guy that we work alongside pretty regularly named Alex Wong, and I'm a huge believer, like photographers have been making insane, beautiful, outstanding, I could never even begin to do it, motorsport images for, 70 years, like going back into the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and they're doing it on film with no autofocus and single shot zoom pulls at a tenth of a second. And it's stuff that like my mind still can't comprehend how they did it. And it's not Photoshop. It's not digitally manipulated to the modern day anything. Like it was done in camera on film without manipulation. And I still am a huge proponent of you do not need the most insane cameras and lenses to do this job and do it at a high level. I'm pretty sure Alex still shoots DSLR stuff, and he's an incredible photographer. They still make incredible, insane images on glass that doesn't really work at 100%, or it's still a 12 megapixel, 12 frame per second DSLR. And the pictures, if I pull them up side by side and you say, which is a better picture, this crap picture that Jamey made on a Nikon Z9 or this insane spot that Camden found and he did it on a D3S. Like I look back at Camden's old stuff. You used to do like a really cool gallery where you would do iPhone only, like at the end of the year. And this was like from like iPhone 4s, 5s, maybe even earlier than that. And you look at it and you're like, that is outstanding photography at a race. And it wasn't done on a Nikon Z9 with eye autofocus or car autofocus or 3D tracking or anything like that. We use the latest and greatest because it helps us make more reliable pictures for our clients. Like we can go out and I know how the camera's going to work, and I know the eye autofocus tracking helps a little bit with some stuff that we do, but then In other cases, like it's completely useless. Like when you point it at a driver's eye, for whatever reason, when the helmet is on, the eye autofocus tracking is like, nope, I see no eyes. And even with their visor fully up and you can see their eyes clear as day, the eye autofocus is like, no, I'm good. Like you got this, like manual focus it, good luck. There's just times where it's no better or different than the DSLRs that we were using not that long ago. And so we both use high-end stuff, but it just kind of helps with the repeatability. But you don't need it. If you're an amateur or you're just going to races, like you don't need my 400-2.8 with a built-in teleconverter, and you don't need car autofocus tracking. Car racing is so predictable. Like I was saying earlier, you get hundreds of laps at the Rolex 24. I think the race distance was like 780 laps or something. Like that's 780 times that the race winning car went by you. So if you can't make a picture in 780 attempts, like I don't really know what to tell you. Like the racetracks are never changing. Like the racing line is the same for pretty much every car. The car is going to go through that point on the track. Like they're going to go around this corner and they're going to be more or less in the same 6-foot area every single lap. And if they're not, you need to start running because they're probably coming at you at a high rate of speed. So you have this predictability with car racing where you can manual focus on a spot on the track like they did 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. And the car will come through that spot to go and do another lap. And you can manual focus on that spot, wait for your moment, click, and you don't need to have it on 20 frame per second burst with a 45 megapixel camera to make something beautiful or interesting.
Totally. And some of these shots that Camden's pulling off, I don't know what kind of gear would help because I'm looking at them and I can't even, as a professional photographer for the last 15 years, I don't know what you did, Camden, to make it work in camera. I mean, I'm looking at some of these.
Sometimes I don't know either, but
I'm like, dude, how? Like the camera has to move this way and then there's lights going this way. And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, truly, we use manual focus a lot more than people would assume. Like everybody would think you're just leaning on autofocus all day long. But in reality, it's actually sometimes easier to just manual focus on a spot on the track, especially when we're doing pans through people or through things or trees or whatever. Like it doesn't matter how smart the camera is. If you're staring at a big clump of trees or something and all you see is leaves, but as you're following a car going past these trees and you can see the car just every so often as it goes past, it doesn't matter how good your autofocus is, it's still going to grab a leaf at some point. It's going to be like, oh, you want a nice picture of a tree? Here you go. So we'll manual focus on the track. And you're shooting at f/22 because you don't need to be doing panning at f/2.8. Like it doesn't help. It actually makes it much harder to pan at wide open apertures. So we'll stop down to like f/22 or f/20 in the middle of the day, focus on a spot on the track, and your depth of field now is several hundred feet. Pretty much everything is going to be in focus if you didn't pan it. But then as soon as you start panning the car without autofocus, you won't see the trees. The camera won't grab the tree leaves. You'll get the picture you want, and you don't need car autofocus tracking. You don't need the latest and greatest stuff. You just need a camera that can manual focus.
Jamey, just keep talking. I'm taking notes over here. I'm trying to steal all these industry secrets. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think those are the images that really stand out. It's the dimension and the texture and the layering of the pans, the composition on some of these more one-dimensional types of pans where it's like the colors are just perfect and it's a car and then there's layered colors dragged, but then these multi-dimensional looks of lights cutting across and, like you said, trees and people in the foreground makes it so interesting.
And they're a lot of fun to do. And honestly, they are the kind of pictures that you don't need credentials to go make. Like at Sebring, I went and stood for almost 3 hours just in fan areas, taking pictures through people, through chair legs, umbrellas, just people standing there watching the race. And people like look at you with this weird look. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you like behind this hill? You can't even see the cars. I'm like, no, but I can see the cars. You just don't know what I'm doing. You don't need credentials to do these cool, crazy, wacky things that Camden and I and other people do. Like it's a lot of fun and you can go find really interesting compositions and ways to shoot a race without credentials, and you don't need to be standing right next to the track, with a photo hole in the catch fence. You could go do some cool stuff with trees and people and buildings, and it's fun.
What about stuff like weather and atmospheric effects?
It's hard. I mean, it's not fun when you're actually out there like standing in the rain, but the pictures are awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with that 1,000%. It's not nice to take all this super expensive gear that we rely on and then have a bunch of water dumped on it and have it fail. And all the camera covers that you want, they generally make stuff really hard to operate. But when it's a rainstorm in the middle of the day in Florida, what comes out of that visually, there's a lot of potential payoff from those conditions, from fog, from crazy clouds. One year at Sebring, supposedly some farmer like set fire to his field and it looked like something straight out of,
There's like Tron.
yeah, Tron, or like the most recent Blade Runner movie, where it was just like totally smoked in at sunrise, just this orange.
It was insane.
It was really cool. And it's something that'll,
We'll never get it again.
but I mean, those are those moments that personally I live for, that kind of interesting stuff other than a bright sunny day with no clouds.
And that's the fun side of it is I get a lot of questions on some of my social media channels. They're like, oh, isn't this boring where you're just standing on a track all day and the cars just come by you and you go to the same place year after year? It's like every single year, the weather is different, the cars are different, the drivers are different. But the weather being the biggest thing, that story that Camden just told at Sebring, I will never forget that morning as long as I live because it was so spectacular. Like in the middle of the day, it just looked smoky hazy, but then that morning, we have this morning warm up that we used to do where the cars would roll down the paddock at 7:45 in the morning and the sun is coming up behind them. And it was this color of orange that I have never seen before. And I have never seen it since. When we actually went trackside for that warm up session, you could see the sun making these sunbeams through the trees and smoke. And it was absolutely insane. And I think I would speak for Camden that neither of us are really that good at controlling a situation. But when you put either of us in a situation where we can't control it, where you're just kind of like candidly capturing the scene or the racetrack or whatever it is, that's where we kind of both thrive, knowing where to go put ourselves and stand. Like when you get a big rainstorm, not every place is the same when it comes to rain. Like some of the places that you go and make these epic rain shots, you would never, ever, ever go stand there during the day when it was completely dry because it is the most boring picture you've ever seen in your life. But then you add a huge torrential downpour and it becomes the coolest place you've ever stood in your entire life. And you just have these 30, 40-foot rooster tails coming off the back of these cars. We had a pretty good downpour during our Roar testing weekend in January, right before the Rolex 24. Camden and I were both standing at this corner together. And it was kind of like this boring, horrendous rain that was just enough to be gray and kind of like miserable where you're just getting a little bit wet, but it wasn't enough to start throwing any real rain off the back of the car. Like all the downforce and all the aerodynamics that the cars have really moves a lot of air. And so it takes a fairly significant amount of water before you really start seeing that in the pictures and off the car. And so we were just kind of standing there. And all of a sudden, the heavens opened with like 6 minutes left of this test session. And it was raining so hard that the rain was like bouncing up off of the racetrack. And like the cars look like they're floating because it's just so much rain. And there's these big Florida raindrops. And we're just standing there all laughing. And I remember looking at Camden and he has this big grin and like a big thumbs up. So like you get those moments where it's really, really fun, but then they red flag it because it's too much water and the cars can't even stay on the track, even with wet tires. I love the environmental stuff where you can't control it.
Are you beating up the gear?
I had a lens go down from that rainstorm. Like there was a couple of years ago where we had one race. It was Petit Le Mans, which is a 10-hour race we do it in October. And I think it rained for
Yeah, I think it rained for 6 or 7 hours and they finally just said it's too much and stopped it early.
I'm pretty sure we all had camera gear break from that. Like if you didn't have a camera or lens break in that, you weren't trying hard enough.
How common is that on a regular basis?
You beat up your gear.
Personally, it's a little more common than it should be. I'm a little clumsy. I dropped a camera off a table last year and shattered the front.
Ouch.
There's instances like that where it's just an accident, but I have a little bit too many of those accidents. But it's also just a unfriendly environment to stuff that is fragile and sensitive. I'm constantly setting my cameras down because I'm not going to hold 3 cameras while I'm using one of them. So they get set on rocks, concrete. They get banged around when we're riding in a golf cart and you set them in the back, or we're riding stupidly 2 people on a scooter trying to carry 50 grand in camera gear. That's always kind of silly. So in general, stuff gets beat up, and I kind of chalk it up to that's the environment. I'm not going to spend too much time trying to baby my equipment if it is affecting my actual shooting.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think we both look at it as their work tools. It's like a hammer to a carpenter. Yes, it's a very expensive hammer, but as long as the glass is in good condition for me, I don't really care how the outside looks. My camera is the same as Camden, just get beat up. You're putting them down in dust and dirt, and you can't bubble wrap this stuff in our job because that will take away from your ability to shoot. Like, you got to sometimes throw it on the ground because something's happening in front of you that you need to capture right now. Some of the street circuits are really hard because you're walking around and there's just no way to get from A to B very easily. So you're rubbing up against concrete walls and stuff gets banged around. And both of my camera bodies have had the finish shined off of the sides of them. My camera lenses kind of look like they've been put through a rock grinder. But as far as the glass goes, I try and keep it in amazing condition. But like Camden, I remember a couple of years ago, at one race, he broke a filter. It shattered in his pocket or something. And he was like, whatever, I'm going to put this on my lens. And he made some really, really cool stuff on pit lane at night, I think. And it's like the same kind of stuff that people are now paying to do with these weird, wacky lenses and filters that have a split glass frame in it. Like Camden did it because he just had like a piece of broken glass in his pocket. Now he's like, whatever, I'm just going to put it back on my lens. And
Made some cool flares with the cracks in the glass. I mean, it was cool for a little bit, and then it got a little too much. But
I think you should market a whole series of filters like that, you know?
just stuff I've stomped on.
The Camden Thrasher
Camden's
series.
broken filters.
Take it another level. Forget the filter. Just smash the front element of the glass.
I still have all the old stuff that I've broken sitting around. Like, if I ever need stuff for like a remote camera setup, I've kept it around. Generally, I've never used it, but maybe that's my new revenue stream is broken camera equipment.
Jamey, I got to ask you about this technique on your website. I've never seen anyone hold the front of the lens hood. I mean, you got a chungus of a lens on, but were you doing a panning shot? Is that something you do regularly, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's just how I hold the lens. I have a pretty large following on TikTok, which is where it kind of started. And somebody was like, what kind of idiot holds his fingers inside the lens hood? And you can't see it. Like,
what is it, like a 600 millimeter?
Anything above a 200 millimeter, you can pretty much put your fingers all the way in it. And when you're shooting at f2.8, you can't see anything because it's a rectangular sensor inside of a circular lens hood. And there's going to be dead zones where the sensor just doesn't see what's happening in the corner of the lens hood. And it's looking so far past it anyway that it doesn't see it. Like, one of the techniques that I kind of like to use is when I'm shooting backlit, like late afternoon, I'll have like a water bottle in my belt bag and I'll stick the water bottle inside the corner of the lens hood, just like on a corner, like deep in it. And you can create some really cool bokeh and light refractions with it. I literally have an entire water bottle sitting inside the lens hood and you can do cool stuff with it. Like, the only time I've ever seen my fingers show up is my wedding wing will make a weird refraction if the light catches it the wrong way when I'm shooting backlit. But if you're shooting pretty much at any aperture and your fingers are in the corner of it, you can't see it.
Yeah, nothing like knowledge to quell the people on the internet. It's like they always have something to say.
The only way that shows up is in the out of focus areas. And you can even use your hand or fingers and make some cool patterns in your bokeh in the back of your photo. Like Jamey's water bottle thing. I do the same thing. Sometimes it helps to steady the camera by wrapping your fingers inside the lens hood. And it's generally not noticeable at all.
Yeah, I find it to be the best way to control the lens. I would probably hold it differently if I was just shooting football and I was shooting at 1/2000 f2.8 all day. But because we're doing slow pans following the cars, you have to be extremely precise with the movement of your lens. It has to perfectly follow the car at the speed the car is doing. So as the car goes past you and wherever you're trying to hit it in the pan, you have to follow it and push your lens or pull your lens at that exact speed. Otherwise, the pan is going to be completely soft. And that's not what either of us are going for generally. So, like having total control over the lens where I can push it or pull it to the exact speed that I want. And the thing that I've really noticed is when it's windy outside, those big lenses and lens hoods get blown around a lot. Like it's hard to pan when it's really windy because the wind is not pushing with a consistent force. Like it's kind of gusting. So you'll get these like weird gusts where it genuinely makes it much harder to pan just because of the wind. So having as much control over the lens as possible is way better.
That's what I figured. It looked like a push-pull, like using the leverage of the lens.
Yeah.
You just got to throw in a couple now. Just put your hand right in front of the lens.
I've done that. You can literally wave your hand in front of the lens and it still can't even really see
it. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's a blur.
It doesn't even see it.
I am interested because I love panning. And I think that's something that really sets some of these images apart. I'm interested, are there settings or go-to techniques that you guys do to increase the probability of nailing these shots? I see you're using monopods. How standard is the use of monopods, tripods, and then what techniques are you guys regularly relying upon?
Pretty much everyone, if they're on like a 4, 5, 600, is going to have that on a monopod, at least because it's just annoying to carry that around without.
It's hard to like carry it. You can do it. I have handheld my 400 or 500 when I did a supercross race because there's so much vertical movement.
Yeah.
It's actually a detriment to have a monopod, but it's too much to carry like handheld for a minute.
I do the same when I shoot aviation for the same reason that a monopod is great when the motion is basically locked on the horizon, which is how cars operate, but is not how helicopters and airplanes operate. So in those cases, I handhold it, but at the racetrack, 100% of the time, unless something weird happens, the 500 is on a monopod. And I use it on the 70-200 frequently also, not all the time, because it does help in some scenarios, although that lens is sort of small enough where it's not genuinely needed all the time.
I have a slightly different technique than Camden does with my 70-200. I feel like you use your monopod more than I do with a 70-200, but it's really only when we're doing some stupidly slow pan. I'm not talking like an 80th of a second or a 40th of a second. Like it's when we're trying to do like a 10th of a second or lower.
I'll often use the monopod not extended to the ground, but just as a little bit of extra weight hanging from the 70-200 just to dampen some of like your hand movement or your body movement.
Interesting. And Jamey, you talked about, you have to have the right speed and you got to go right with the cars, which I'm guessing can be pretty damn hard when it's race cars. You're not panning a guy on a bicycle. Is there a range that you guys know to go to and lock in on?
If I go to a corner, I'll start with something that's pretty safe. Like one of my clients has a request every weekend that they need like a 1/200th pan, which for us is not really panning. It's just following the car, click, click, click. It's not hard, but they need like a sharp end-to-end shot for sponsor stuff. And then once I do that, then I'll go to like a 60th of a second. And that's kind of where my safe zone is. And then just work down from there. But you can't use the same formula for every single corner because there's some corners where the cars are too close and your relative speed to the car. It's like if you were watching, let's just say an air show, for example, if a plane is really far away from you, even though it's doing close to Mach 1, it doesn't have the same relative speed as it does when it flies directly over top of you. And it's the exact same with race cars. When they're on top of us, a slow shutter speed pan could be like 100th of a second. Where if you go to another corner where the cars are much farther away, 100th of a second, it looks like the car is barely moving. So you really have to know what corner you're at, what picture you're trying to make, and what your desired result is going to be. And sometimes the result that you get is very different than what you think it's going to be. It depends on so many variables.
I would say like Starting at a 200th is super safe, and it'll show some motion and get the point across that, hey, this thing is moving. Down to like a 60th, that's still pretty repeatable. And at like a 60th, that'll have some nice motion in the wheels and the background. Going down to like a 30th, that will make even like a pretty standard perpendicular side panning shot look really nice because it'll have a lot of motion. And then below that, I think, is kind of where you start to have more fun with it, and it becomes less repeatable in a short amount of time. And going down to like a 10th or a half second, something really silly like that, will start to add a bunch more factors in, whether visually or just like technically trying to accomplish that. So that's kind of my range of panning, I guess.
And something with panning that I think people forget is that because you're taking pictures of a moving object, like you're standing still, but the car or motorcycle or plane or whatever it is moving through space and time. So if you are shooting at a tenth of a second, I'm not a math whiz, but there's a formula you can plug in. If the car's doing, let's just say 100 to 150 miles an hour, how far it will physically move in 1/10 of a second. And it's not a short amount of space. Like IndyCar, where the cars are doing 240 miles an hour, they're covering a football field in like a second. And that's a huge amount of distance and space that it's moving. So you have to remember that just because you're not moving, your subject is, and there's things that will create problems in your pan. Some of the places we go, like Sebring, which is notoriously bumpy, like the track surface is really bumpy. It's an old World War II airfield. So they literally still run on the old World War II tarmac and runways that were concrete blocks. And those concrete blocks have shifted and changed over the last 70, 80 years. And the physical differences in each concrete block means that the car's suspension is moving around a lot. And these cars aren't road cars. They're really, really stiffly sprung on the suspension. So as a car is bouncing around, even if it's 10 feet while your shutter is open making this picture, that's 10 feet that this car has moved vertically and horizontally through space and time. It's really crazy when you start to think about that stuff. And all of those variables, like the curbing that the car is going over and how much the suspension is actually physically moving the chassis. When you start to get vertical movement in a car, that makes your pan soft, because it's okay if it's moving horizontally past you, but as soon as it starts bouncing around vertically, you start getting softness in your picture. So you have to like know, well, I want to do a 10th of a second pan here and get all these crazy colors, but these cars are bouncing so much through this corner that there's almost no way that you're going to get a sharp picture. So you have to adjust your shutter speed to shorten that amount of time the car is actually moving to make the picture sharp.
I love that. That's like a master class in paying attention to every little thing that affects the final output of the photo.
But those are the things that we have to know. We're not even consciously thinking of it necessarily, but we're just standing at a corner and you're like, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? Or I'm just going to go to this corner because I know it will work because I've done it before. Whereas somebody with a spectator credential and just brought their camera with them, they might stand at this corner for 6 hours and be like, I got nothing sharp because the cars are bouncing all over the place. It had nothing to do with you. You did a great job, but the cars are literally bouncing all the way through this corner and you're never going to stop that.
Yeah, I think I'd be the spectator guy.
Another thing to point out, similar to what Jamey just said, is that if you're trying to smoothly track a vehicle and you're in the inside of a giant steady radius corner, it's going to be going the same speed as far as you're concerned for a long time. But if you're in their braking zone, they're going to be slowing down. So as you're tracking them from one picture to another, their speed is changing. So like we have to be mindful about that and try to anticipate when they're going to hit the brakes to slow down our speed that we're moving the camera a little bit. And I've noticed sometimes where I don't think about that and I'm wondering why these seemingly simple photos to accomplish are not working. And then I think, oh yeah, I've started taking these photos right as they're hitting the brakes. And that's like a significant speed that they're losing that I'm not accounting for. Same thing accelerating out of a corner or stuff coming towards you versus going away. There's a difference in their apparent speed and angular velocities that you kind of need to be aware of. And that's something that comes after doing this for a bunch of years and taking a million photos of it.
In IMSA WeatherTech, we have essentially 4 different classes, but 3 totally different types of car that are all on track together. And each of those 3 different classes of car will perform differently. Like we have these prototype cars called GTP cars that are basically like rocket ships with wheels. And they are completely different than the LMP2 cars, which are still prototypes, but not as high performance prototypes. And then you have like GT cars, which are more like road cars with big wings on the front and back. And they all perform differently. And then you take that and you compare, even on the same circuit, like we go to some of these circuits where you can compare GT3 cars versus Formula One cars. And Formula One cars will take a totally different line through this exact same corner. They will brake at a completely different place and they will do it in a very violent way. That's like their biggest performance thing is the braking. And so when you go to a corner where the braking zone is really, really intense, they're braking from 200 miles an hour plus down to maybe 60 miles an hour in the span of 100 meters or less. And it is a really, really sudden stop. Whereas that same corner, that same track, you compared the GT3 cars that Camden and I are used to shooting all day, every day. They don't come at it with as much speed, but they also don't have the same braking power. And so it's a much smoother deceleration. And all of those things you have to take into account.
Wow, that's some great information. Now, we talked about what the day of is like with offloading the images and getting the images into the people who are hiring you. I'm interested in the usage of the images and more specifically how you guys are allowed to use the images. You know, Jamey, you talked about Camden uploading stuff to Instagram. Do you guys have the ability to use your photos, and when are you able to use the photos for your own personal use, or is there any limits on how you can use them?
It depends on the series we're in or what we're photographing. The organizers often have quite widely varying limits that they claim on what we can do with it and whether they pretend to claim ownership of these images or not, which is, I think, a big discussion. But personally, I try to, at least for my clients, say that yes, they have the right to use these images for whatever it is that they need, but also I retain control of them for my own purposes as long as that isn't really conflicting with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Like I had a client come to me a couple of years ago and try and hire me for a big race, and they wanted full copyright ownership of the images. And I said, well, I'm happy to do that, but you're not going to like the number. If I no longer have the ability to do what I need to do with these pictures, even though I may never do anything with them, I'm going to charge you appropriately for it. And I ended up not getting that client for that race. So same as Camden, even to my biggest manufacturers, I have the copyright ownership of the images. They are licensing them for their needs, which is, to be honest with you, mainly social media and press release type stuff. It's not very often that we get stuff that ends up on billboards or anything like that. But it gets kind of tricky with some of the series, like Camden said, where they think that they have true ownership of the images, which they've also never really been pushed back on. If for some reason this became like a legal issue, I have a feeling that it would probably end up siding with the creators of the content that would be the owner. But then neither of us have ever really been put in that position where you really had to get legal on somebody.
So do the clients mainly have a non-exclusive right to use the pictures, and then if they want exclusivity, you negotiate that separately after the fact on a case-by-case basis?
I've never really had anybody that wanted exclusivity, to be honest. Like, again, I don't think that they would really like the price.
Right.
This is our job. Like, this isn't something I'm doing for fun. And I think that there's a lot of people in the world that forget that this is my job. Like, this is like any job in the world where I have a product that I'm trying to sell to somebody that wants or needs it. You kind of have to remind them, yes, I'm happy to have you be the exclusive person that gets this picture, but you already don't like the price for the agreement we have. Let's 10x it and you're definitely not going to like that price. So on one race weekend, I'm working for multiple manufacturers that are competing against each other. There's multiple teams within that, and I have two other photographers working for me, and they own their own images. Like I don't claim ownership of their images. So, if a team or manufacturer wanted to have exclusivity for it, like obviously I would be happy to have that conversation. But in the end, what it ends up boiling down to is like, well, we don't actually need exclusivity. We're getting what we need from you. We're using it how we need to use it, and everybody's happy.
I think a little bit different scenario for me is when I'm doing like a magazine shoot, some kind of editorial thing where the entire scenario is built up by, let's say, Road and Track or something. I'm there to shoot images for them. I've never had anyone else ask, hey, can we use these images that you shot for this issue of Road and Track for an advertisement for whatever? But in my mind, in those cases, those images are exclusively for whatever that job was at that time. And I will wait personally to share any of that until the people who paying me have had their first use of it and they've got their use out of it. With covering an event, sports, or anything like racing, I think that's a little bit different scenario. Like if it was a private test, I would say that same thing applies. But if it's a general race weekend where I'm shooting kind of everything that's there, if a magazine comes to me and says, hey, we like this image, and it's an image that I shot for this team that I work for, I don't really see any problem with getting more use out of that.
Agree.
Okay. And in the hybrid world now of video, do you guys dabble in that? I mean, Jamey, you said you had a TikTok. Are you creating video content for your clients?
No, I don't do any video content for any of my clients. The video stuff within racing series gets really complicated just with the commercial rights, broadcast rights. It just gets really, really complicated the second you try and make real video footage for those teams. But more personally, I'd rather be like kind of good at photography than like very, very average at photography and videography. I'm already like so strung out on weekends just with my own time. Like, I might not sleep very much on a race weekend just because of the amount of time I'm working and editing pictures and day-to-day relations with clients. Adding another layer on top of that, I don't bother with. And there's other people that do it much, much better than I do. So I'd rather be just a photographer and then recommend people to do videography work. Like some of my friends are videographers, I'll recommend them to do work. But I also do enjoy doing a lot of educational content on YouTube. Like I do long form YouTube videos, just kind of vlogs, day in the life type stuff. I've done a lot of educational TikToks, like what our world kind of looks like as a photographer, because it's a different side of racing that people don't necessarily get to see, but it is really interesting. These are sports that have a lot of eyes on them. Like it's not little league soccer where you have mom and dad and that's it. Like this is watched by millions and millions, and in Formula One's case, billions of people. So when you are able to show a little bit more behind the scenes of how it actually works to work in the industry, the things we're seeing and doing, there's a whole other side to like what I do trackside for my clients where I'm like doing technical photography for them. Like if they ask me to take a picture of a part of a car where they think it's damaged, I'm there to help them not just like make a pretty social media picture for their Instagram, but like actually win races. So there's just a lot of sides to this that I really enjoy sharing with other people that is like short form video content, but I don't do video for my clients.
I would agree with basically everything Jamey said. I've had people ask me about video before, and it is something I'm interested in, but for the most part, I'm not done with photography yet to just jump into video. An early answer for why I didn't do video was that I didn't have cameras capable of doing reasonable video, which is not true now. The mirrorless cameras are actually really great at video, but I'm not interested in trying to divert like a bunch of my creativity towards something else that will take away from the photography aspect.
And if you guys had to give a piece of advice to someone out here who was looking to become a credentialed motorsports photographer, what piece of advice would you give?
I would say try and spend as much time as you can at any race you can get to, just to be familiar with how it works, how to operate a camera, build up a body of work that you can show to someone that's like, hey, this is what I can do. This is why you should hire me, or this is why you should let me into your event organization as a member of the media. Because without that, you really don't have any justification for why someone should let you do that.
Yeah, I echo all of that. Like, I get asked a lot, how do you become a Formula One photographer? How do you become a motorsport photographer? And the answer that pretty much all of us have used, with very few exceptions, is we just started going to races as fans. And you bring a camera. We're really lucky in motorsports in general, is in that they're very welcoming and they're very open to fans bringing cameras. Like, you can't say that about golf. You can't say it about the Masters. Like, you can't even bring your phone into Augusta National. You can't bring a camera with a 400 millimeter lens into the Super Bowl. You can't bring a camera into an NBA game. You can't bring it to anything. And with the exception being motorsport. So you don't build a portfolio by getting credentials. You build a portfolio by going to races as a fan, bringing your camera, making cool pictures from fan areas, tell stories, do something different than the 20,000 other people that are in our DMs every week that are like, hey, I want to do this, like, hire me. And it's like, you don't even have a picture of your car on your Instagram profile. That doesn't tell me how talented you are at a racetrack. And that's really the only way to do it, is you have to go to these events with your camera, and don't use the I don't have credentials excuse not to make cool pictures. You can go to these events pretty much at any level. Like, there's some Formula One races where they don't allow cameras. There are very few of them, but like most of the other Formula One races, there's maybe a lens limitation. But then with IMSA WeatherTech that Camden and I cover, the 24 hours of Le Mans, most World Endurance Championship races that I know of have no lens limitations. IndyCar has no lens limitations. Go rent a 400 or 500 millimeter lens, and you can bring it into the track and make cool pictures. And really, the most important part is just being around and being a personality that other people start to get to know, because it's not just about your pictures. Like, the biggest and best clients I have really didn't come from my perceived talent with a camera. You develop relationships, and those relationships will last a lot longer than your pictures will. And those are the kind of things that'll get you in the door, but keep you in the door for a much longer period of time. But you have to start just by going, because there's no other way to do it. There's no school for it. There's no degree program for it. Like, you either go or you don't.
If there was a degree program for it, or any kind of schooling, I would say any sort of business schooling knowledge that you can gain would be important, because that's a huge side of this, as it would be for any person having photography as their job. Personally, I didn't and still really don't know anything about, and I think it's a negative aspect of how I have ended up in this field. It would have been smarter if I had realized this is what I wanted to do in college, learn how businesses operate, how to make a successful business, because that's a huge part of doing this and making it last, and trying to figure it out on the fly. That's actually very tough.
Marketing and business are really the only things that I would recommend. Like, photography school, I'm not a big proponent of, because there's not very many of us working in motorsports anyway that ever went to photography school or any kind of journalism school. There's nothing that they're going to teach you that you can't learn by going to a racetrack and actually doing. The rest of it is the art of running any business, because it's just a business. I have a product that needs to be sold to people that want a product, and I have to figure out which of those people is right for me as a customer.
I love that. Such great advice. I got to know, favorite race or favorite location that you guys have photographed on the circuit?
My favorite race is probably Le Mans 24 hour.
Not the Nürburgring.
Overall, as an event, I like Le Mans better. Nürburgring as a location, as a track, 100%. But Le Mans, I think, just as an overall event, it's one endurance race. You have time to experiment. The crew, the drivers, even the cars look tired, act tired. There's stories to tell there all the time. It's half public roads, half racetrack. It's a super historic race. It's just a really neat atmosphere.
I agree. I love Le Mans. I also really enjoy Sebring and the Monaco Grand Prix. Monaco is an insane track. Like when you're standing a couple inches away from Formula One cars and like Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel a couple years ago, and like all these huge icons of the sport that are multiple world champions, like whizzing by you at 180 miles an hour, and they're like closer than I am to my laptop is pretty wild.
If you guys didn't mention Nürburgring and Monaco, I was going to have to ask. So I'm glad you guys mentioned them. It's like I used to work in a body shop, and the owner of the shop, a good friend of mine, huge racing guy, and that was like the pinnacle of his life was going to Nürburgring.
It's awesome. I mean, I got to do it once, and fortunately, I got to do it with Camden there, and he got to show me around a little bit because you've done it more than I have, and it is a ridiculous race cap.
It looks like it. And then Monaco, I'm like, Jamey, please don't say that Monaco is all hype. Or it's like, I'm waiting to hear, like, is it awesome. Everything that you see? I mean, that's what made me fall in love with F1 was seeing a race in Monaco. And I'm like, oh my God, that can't be real. It looks like a video game.
It really, honestly, like Monaco is like when you go out for the first practice session or for qualifying, especially when they're really on a fast lap, it takes you a couple of minutes to kind of get used to the speed, because we were talking earlier about like relative speed. Like the relative speed in Monaco where they're on top of you doing that kind of speed is truly mind-meltingly fast. Especially like there's one spot where they come out of the tunnel into the harbor area, and they come out of the tunnel at like 180 miles an hour with sparks flying everywhere, and they're like right up against the catch fence that you're standing next to, and you can feel the energy from the car, like the wind. You can feel the sparks getting pulled past you, like all the debris getting past you. It kind of hurts like the first lap or two with all the sand and dust that they're pulling behind them. It's really, really, really crazy.
That sounds wild. I told my son, I'm like, I probably put my foot in it, but I was like, one day we'll go to a race in Monaco.
Got to do it. It's awesome.
Sounds that way. What do you guys have coming down the pipeline? Any projects or upcoming events?
I think Long Beach Grand Prix is next for the IMSA calendar in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Mid-April, yeah. Long Beach for both of us. And then we kind of go into like May and June are pretty challenging for travel for both of us. So we have Long Beach, and then I have the Miami Formula One race. And then we go to Laguna Seca in California for the IMSA WeatherTech Series. And then we both go to Detroit, I believe, for the IMSA WeatherTech Series. And then it's basically like to Le Mans and another 24-hour for the year. So it's an amazing time of year where it's, there's a lot of business, a lot of work. It's good money, but the travel is hard. And by the time we get to like July, you're kind of ready for a vacation because it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, June to August ends up being a super busy time that can often be nearly nonstop for a couple months.
Yeah, it sounds intense. Camden, are you looking forward to seeing your favorite person with a whistle in Detroit? Or
yeah. Actually, I had a guy last year tell me like, hey, we're still learning this too. And like I stopped for a second, I was like, all right, guy, like I can respect that. I'm out here learning this. So are you. Like he was making some dumb claim to me, so I was about to kind of argue with him. But in that case, I was like, you know what? If you're being respectful and saying like, you're not really sure, but you'll try and figure it out, I can respect that too.
I love that. We're all just figuring it out as we go along in life.
Not everybody is that nice about it.
No, and normally I'm not always that nice either. It depends on the situation. If it's silly and it's going to make no difference to me, I won't really do anything. But there's times when it's like...
It makes a big difference.
They're saying something just like completely absurd. And I'm like, hey, does this sound right to you actually? That generally doesn't go over well, but yeah. I am looking forward to going back to Detroit because I had a great time there last year, even if there was a lot of wasted time learning stuff, which in the end, a new track, I almost always enjoy just because it's constant discovery, it's constant learning. Maybe it's positive, maybe it's negative, but you're always bringing something new that you can apply later.
Are we going to go get pizza again?
I hope so.
All right. It's a date.
I love it. We're going to have to follow along. Where can our listeners find more of your work, follow along with the pizza, the Detroit, the people yelling at you with whistles? Where can we follow?
Most of my stuff is on my Instagram. It's just at Camden Thrasher, my full name. that's where I post most of my personal stuff at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm Instagram. I'm the social media whiz, I guess. I'm on Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, all of it at Jamey Price Photo.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys. This has been an awesome conversation. You guys really opened up the world of racing and motorsports photography for me personally. So I can only imagine that all of our listeners out there are sharing some of the same thoughts. I want to thank you guys again for your time, your expertise. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I really truly love the racing world. And if you've ever thought about coming out to a race, you should definitely do it. You're not going to be the only one with a camera. It's a huge group of photographers, fans, and credentialed photographers that we all go to these races. You have amazing access, and there's a really cool camaraderie, not just with the credentialed photographers like myself and Camden, but all these fans with cameras too. You end up meeting a bunch of people and going to the good spots around the track, and you can learn. It's kind of being part of a photography club, but you're all there to experience and see a race. So if you've ever thought about coming out to a race, definitely check out the IMSA WeatherTech series.
Wonderful. Well, again, a huge thank you to both Camden and Jamey, and to all of our listeners out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are a fan of the show but are not yet a subscriber, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, B&H's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts, and please click subscribe. You can also find us on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests along with our show notes. And please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comment about the show. I'm your host, Derek Fosbender. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein, and our executive producer is Richard Stevens. On behalf of us all, thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thanks to Leica for sponsoring this week's episode.